Hi everyone, hope you all are doing well. As I hope you remember, we are right now in our Unit 4 review, preparing for the Unit 4 test. Quick shift on that. I want to explain. Originally, I said that your test was going to be this coming Thursday or Friday, that you would take it in either of those 2 days. But in light of our school's decision to not have any new information or assignments for you on Friday, that is going to be pushed back. Obviously, I didn't post anything for you this most recent Friday a couple days ago, and I won't be able to post anything for you this coming Friday. So this week, Monday through Thursday, we will be finishing our review that got pushed back, and next Monday and Tuesday, that's the 13th and the 14th, is going to be the unit test. So as a reminder, the way that this unit test is going to work, this, by the way, was intended to keep the structure of tests and assessments as close to the way we do it in class as possible. Because this is a little bit more involved, I can't just do like an online quiz for you. So the 2 days that you have available to you are Monday the 13th, Tuesday the 14th. There will be a link going out later this week, and you can sign up for an appointment. So there'll be 2 appointments on Monday, 2 appointments on Tuesday, with about 17 availabilities in each one. So you have to sign up for a time to take the test. The test will be proctored via either Zoom or Google Hangout. I haven't figured out the specifics there. So I'll be like watching you as you take it, and every appointment time is going to have a different test. So it doesn't benefit you to take it later, because even if your friends send you their test, it's going to be different. So that's how the unit test is going to work. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. One more quick thing, in terms of being able to use your notes, if you have completed all of your IXL time, you're good to go. If you haven't, then you can't use your notes. So that's kind of our equivalent of like homework completion. I will tally up how many, all the totals you needed to have spent on IXL, and let you guys know later in the week, so that if you need to do any catching up, you can do that over the weekend, so you're good to go by the time you take your test. I think I said that it was either time or like if you got like a 95 to 100% on something, like it was okay if you didn't spend the full time, because obviously I know you know you're doing it correctly if you have that high of a score. So I will post in detail about the IXL requirements later. What else was I going to say? I just wanted to shout those of you out who are watching these lectures consistently. There's quite a few of you who've been reaching out and saying that you benefit a lot from the lectures and from having it be really consistent to the way that we did lecture when we were in school. So thank you so much to those of you who are watching it. There's a really strong correlation between students who are, like watching and reaching out to me and asking questions about it and the scores in IXL. So you should be really, really proud. And I know that you guys can all keep it up. So today we are reviewing Unit 4.2, which is triangle congruence. As a quick just summary of the week, tomorrow we will be doing triangle similarity. On Wednesday we'll be doing polygons and parallelograms, and Thursday we'll be reviewing trig. So that's what you have looking ahead. Today's review is a little bit more, longer because there's a lot to triangle congruence. So let's jump in on the 4.2 packet, which if you don't have on you, it's in Google Classroom from when it was posted originally. So I'm on page 5. So these previous pages you don't really have to worry about. What you're going to be tested on is the proofs. So as a reminder, when you are trying to prove that triangles are congruent, so you have 2 triangles that have the same dimensions, meaning all 3 angles are congruent, all 3 sides are congruent, there's 5 ways that you can do that. Right? The first way is proving that all 3 sides are congruent. That's side, side, side. The second way is proving that you have a side, an included angle, and another side congruent. So let me just actually diagram this for you. Side, angle, side, versus side, 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 which is just 3 sets of sides. All right, so side, angle, side, the key word there, as I hope you remember, is included angle, right? It cannot be the case that the angle is off here, not sandwiched in between the two sides. So when I say included, and sorry if I'm belaboring the point here, but I really want to make sure you guys get this. When I say included, that means that this angle that we're talking about touches both of the sides. So if you said that this angle over here is the one that we're talking about, well, that can't be the case, right? Because it doesn't touch both of the sides. It only touches this one side. It doesn't touch that other side. All right, so included angle means it's like sandwiched in between the two sides and touches both of them. There is no angle side. Remember, it spells a word. We don't want it. That's not a thing. Okay. Next, we have angle side angle. This is just the inverse of that. So you have two angles and their included side. So the side that is touched by both of the angles. It cannot be this side here because that's not touched by both. Can't be this one here because that's not touched by both. Next, we have angle side. So these two are like, two peas in a pod, easily confusable. Please don't confuse them. Angle side is when you have two angles and a side that is not included, meaning it's a side that isn't touched by both of your angles. It's only touched by one. So it could have been that angle. It also could have been this one down here, right? It just cannot be the included side, because if it was the included side, it would then be angle side angle. Finally, we have hypotenuse leg. This is when you know that your hypotenuse is congruent. The hypotenuse is the side that is opposite of the right angle, right? So you have to know it's a right triangle, and then your hypotenuse is the one that's directly across from that. And then either of the other legs. It doesn't matter which one. All right, so those are your 5 ways that you can prove that triangles are congruent. When you're completing a triangle congruence proof, that's always going to be your last, like one of these 5 is going to be your last reason. So these triangles are congruent because of one of these 5. Then we have reasons that we can prove sides are congruent. So the first is given, right? It's given to you. We have our primary statements and our secondary statements. In terms of given statements, that would be a primary given statement, right? I'm telling you that these two sides are congruent. Next, you can know that sides are congruent because of definition of the midpoint. Remember, you have to be told that there's a midpoint. So if you're not told that there's a midpoint, you can't use definition of a midpoint. And as a reminder, that is like when you have a triangle that has, like, let's say that bottom A, B, C, and I tell you that B is the midpoint of AC, it means that it cuts it in half and those two halves are equal. And again, you have to be told. So like, if they don't say midpoint in your given statements, it can't be definition of a midpoint. Next, we have reflexive property. This is when a side is congruent to itself. So if we have that like same diagram up here, right? That side is just congruent to itself because it's the same side. And the name for that, the way that we describe that, is the reflexive property. And for that one, you don't have to be told. Not told, it's easier to write it. So that one is just, you look at the diagram and you're like, oh, well, okay, I see that it's the same side that exists for both. Reflexive property. All right, so those are your reasons that you can prove sides are congruent. You're never going to just use, like, make up a reason or pull one from angles or whatever. If you are proving that sides are congruent, those are the only 3 that you can say. Next, we have reasons that angles are congruent. Again, given vertical angles. So that's like when you have, I hope you remember this from Friday or Thursday, but that's when you have triangles that look like that, right? This one is, I think, like the cousin to reflexive property, because you're not told about either of them. You just use your eyeballs and say like, oh, well, okay, I can see that they're vertical. Next, we have these, like the set of 3, alternate interior, alternate exterior corresponding. Guys, if you have this one, like, I feel like we kind of, struggled a little bit with when we learned it the first time. When you have parallel lines, that should be a red flag in your brain to say, okay, I know that it's going to create some sort of angle relationship, right? Because parallel lines, when we talked about this on Friday. Parallel lines, when they're cut by a transversal, create sets of congruent angles, either alternate interior, alternate exterior, or corresponding. Consecutive were supplementary, so not relevant to us right now. All right. So when you see parallel lines, you should be like, oh my God, I am looking for a set of angle pairs that are going to be congruent. All right. Lastly, we have definition of an angle bisector. This is when you have a bisector, so a segment that cuts, so let's say A, B, C, D. Let's say AC, so this line right here, this segment, bisects angle BAD. All right, so it bisects the angle. What that means is it cuts the angle in half, so those two halves are equal. To me, like that is the cousin to midpoint because they do similar things. They cut things in half, and you have to be told in both circumstances, right? You have to be told that there's a bisector in order to use it, or you have to be told that there's a midpoint in order to use it. All right, reflexive and vertical, you don't have to be told, you just use your eyes and your brain. And then all of the angle relationships, you're not told that the relationships are there, you're just told that you have parallel lines, and then you go from there. All right. So with this, guys, I am going to do, I'm going to skip just to the general examples that we have, because I don't want you to, I don't want to spoil it for you and you know which theorem we're using. So where did I want to go? Shoot. Okay, so we're going to skip all the way to page 20, which is homework that you should have already done. So just follow along or do it on a separate sheet of paper. All right. So for these ones right now, we don't know, we're starting with question 7. We don't know what method we're using, which is why I want to do it. So you kind of have to figure that out as you go. So as a reminder, I'm just going to do a couple of these with you so you can see again, it refreshes your memory on how we do the proofs. So the first thing you want to do is fill in your given statements. So we have 2 given statements. The first tells us that angle BAC is congruent to angle EDC. We know that because it's given. And then we can mark that up. BAC, it's this angle, and it's congruent to EDC, this angle. Next, we're told that BC is congruent to CE. BC is congruent to CE, given. And then let's jump to the end and write in what we're proving. So that's always going to be last. ABC, triangle ABC, is congruent to triangle DEF. We don't know why yet, right? That's like the golden question. We're trying to figure that out. But what that allows us to do by filling that in is see how many statements we have left that we need to fill out. And we only have 1. So then we can go back, and I hope you remember the primary versus secondary given statement trick. Primary given statements are when your given statement is just concrete, like, hey, these sides or these angles are congruent. Secondary given statements are, I'm not telling you that these specific sides or these specific angles are congruent. I'm telling you something else. I'm telling you, hey, this is a midpoint or a bisector, or these are parallel lines, right? Primary given statements don't allow us to draw any inferences. They're just like, they are what they are. They tell us that things are congruent. It does the job for us. Secondary given statements are ones that you have to draw an inference from, right? If you're told there's a midpoint, you have to then make the connection and say, all right, I'm going to get a statement from that. That statement is going to be, these 2 sides are congruent because of definition of the midpoint. But for this example, both of our given statements are primary. So there's no inference to draw from that. Remember, secondary means, okay, well, I'm going to get something from that. We don't have any secondary statements here. So for that blank that we need to fill, we have to look to either reflexive property or vertical angles. There's nothing else we can do. All right, and I hope you can see here that it's vertical angles. So that's angle ACE is congruent to angle DCE. And the reason is vertical angles. Sorry, people in my house are yelling, so I'm trying to talk really loudly so you can't hear them. Vertical angles. All right, and now we can say what, why we know that these triangles are congruent. And we know that because of angle, angle, side. Specifically angle, angle, side, because that side is not included in our angles. All right, go ahead and pause the video, complete number 8, and I'll post the answers for you tomorrow. We are going to go to the next page and do question 9. So I chose this one for a couple reasons. The first reason is that what you're proving is a little bit different, right? We're not proving that triangles are congruent. And the second reason is that I see some room for secondary statements here. So let's start from the top. U is the midpoint of ST. Given. And this is a secondary statement, right? It doesn't tell us that anything is congruent, meaning we're going to get an inference from that. Okay, but let's keep going. Next, we're told SV is congruent to TW. We know that because it's given, and this is a primary given statement. It's just telling us that things are congruent, so we can mark it. SV congruent to TW. Next, we have VW is congruent to WU. VU is congruent to WU right there. That was another primary statement. It just told us that things are congruent. If you're confused about what I mean when I say primary, secondary, I need you to call me so we can explain that more. So then we're going to jump to the bottom and write what we're proving. We're proving that angle SVU is congruent to angle TWU. Now I hope you remember, if not that's okay, that when we're doing proofs where we're proving that parts of triangles are congruent, not the triangles themselves, the reason is going to be that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. CPCTC. Remember, we always fill that in. But in order to say that congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent, you need to prove that the triangles themselves are congruent. So that then becomes a step right above us. So why are the triangles congruent? Well, that we don't know. At this point, we're just, once we write the CPCTC part, it becomes a normal triangle congruence proof. And you're able to see, okay, I have one more blank that I need to fill. And we have one secondary statement. So that's where we're going to make the inference from, right? We don't need to look at reflexive property or vertical angles. We're just going to take it from our secondary statement. So U is the midpoint of ST, meaning U is cutting ST in half. So SU is congruent to UT. And the reason we know that is because of definition of a midpoint. All right, now we know that these triangles are congruent because of the side, side, side theorem. We don't have any angles, it's just 3 sides. And we already proved the parts about the angles in CPCTC. All right, so that is it for me. This is a long video. Please complete numbers 10 and 11 as well as 8. You don't have to worry about the stuff up here because I am focusing your test on proofs. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll post the answers to these for you to check tomorrow. Make sure you are doing the IXL as well. I know that this is kind of a longer math day, but it is what it is. I think it's good that you guys have Fridays now to kind of catch up. But please let me know if you have any questions. If you struggled with triangle congruence proofs the first time around, please do not hesitate to reach out. I am more than happy. Actually, I want to help you with this. So I would love for you all to let me know if I can just hop on FaceTime and walk through a few of these with you. All right. Again, questions, send them my way. Please make sure you are doing all the work here, putting yourself in a great position to succeed on your unit test. I miss you all, and I will talk to you tomorrow.